Selected parts from the book Lone Fox Dancing Autobiography of Ruskin Bond, Part 2. My grandfather Bond was a good soldier, and grandfather Clark, that is, my mother's father, helped in the making of solid railway carriages for the Northern Railway. The former had come from England with his regiment when he was 17. The latter was born in a place called Dera Ismail Khan, a frontier outpost where his father was a clerk in the office of the commissioner, a certain Mr. Durand, who drew up the Durand line between India and Afghanistan. A foot soldier, grandfather Bond was always route marching from one cantonment to another, with the result that his four children were all born in different places. My own dear father was born in the hot, dusty town of Shahjahanpur on July 24, 1896. He was baptized in the same cantonment church where, some 40 years previously, the assembly of worshippers had all been massacred at the outbreak of the 1857 rebellion. My father was a good student, well read, and after finishing school at the Sanawar Military School, he took a teacher's training at Lovedale in the Nilgiris. He moved about the country a good deal, working at various jobs, including a stint as an assistant manager on a tea estate in Munnar, then Travancore, Cochin, now Kerala, and all the while he collected butterflies, stamps, picture postcards, the crests of Indian states, and anything else that was collectible. He used his teaching skills to land tutorial jobs in various princely states where, like E.M. Forster and J.R. Ackley before him, he taught English, spoken and written, to the young royals before they were sent off to English public schools. He was working for the ruler of Alwar when he met my mother. He had taken a month's holiday and was staying at a boarding house in Mussoorie, the popular hill station perched on a ridge above Dehradun. It was late summer in 1933 and he was 36 years old. My mother was 18 and undergoing a nurse's training at Cottage Hospital on the ramparts of Gun Hill, not far from her old school. They met and married there. This rather complicated personal history and the age difference between them did not prevent my parents from becoming man and wife, although I have never come across a record of their marriage. But they certainly became Mr. and Mrs. Bond for my baptismal certificate issued in Kasauli the following year. It gives everyone's names in full. Father Aubrey Alexander Bond, Mother Edith Dorothy, infant son. I discovered later that it was my father who chose the name Owen Ruskin Bond. Was it his secret wish that I should become a writer and painter like the famous Victorian John Ruskin? I never did find out. Owen means warrior in Welsh, so perhaps he wanted me to be both artist and soldier. Well, I did become an artist of a kind, but I am not and never have been a brave person. Foolhardy, yes, and certainly stubborn, but not brave. So it is just as well that nobody ever bothered with Owen. The name was soon forgotten. Another of my father's many hobbies was photography, and I still have the pictures he took with his Rolleicord camera of the infant Ruskin, a few hours old, a day old, 2 days old, a month old, etc., in the arms of a nurse at the military hospital or at home with my mother or aunt or Mrs. Mackenzie, the pastor's wife. My father had found employment with the ruler of Jamnagar and he left a few weeks later. My mother and I stayed on in Dehradun for a few months before we joined him. I have a picture taken, perhaps, in a Dehradun photo studio of me in a pram surrounded by flowers and bouquets. On the back is a little note with love and a big kiss from your wee son Owen. It is in my mother's handwriting and addressed to my father. The affectionate tone is hard to miss. There is a note of comfortable intimacy. In Jamnagar, also known as Navanagar, my father started a small palace school for the little prince and young princesses. There were at least five of them, or maybe more, but I remember three or four quite well. Jamnagar was a little port town in the Kathiawar Peninsula on the west coast of India. Small steamers plying across the Gulf of Kutch stopped there, and sometimes large Arab dhows, which made a lovely sight with their great white sails. This part of the country was full of small independent states, all owing allegiance to the British Crown, but for the most part running their own affairs. Jamnagar was probably the best known of these states because it was, as I have said, the home of Indian cricket. A previous ruler, Ranjit Singh Ji, had played Test cricket for England and with some distinction. His nephew, Dulip Singh, had done the same but had given up playing due to a frail constitution. Promising young players like Vinu Mangat were learning their cricket in Jamnagar. My father was no cricketer, but we dutifully attended most of the cricket matches, which involved visiting teams from England or elsewhere, and I was taken along to these games as part of my parents' social obligations. Everyone who mattered would be there, the Jam Sahib in immaculate sherwani and chudidar pajamas when he was not on the field himself, and his retinue, his family members, and his European and Indian staff, visiting officials, neighboring princes, and refreshments were constantly being passed around by bearers in smart white turbans. I don't remember much of the cricket. I was too small to appreciate a batsman's technique or a bowler's guile, but I do remember the refreshments offered freely at the cricket matches and the birthday parties organized for the children of the royal family, to which all those working for the Jam Sahib would be invited. Don't eat too much, warned my mother, as I helped myself to gulab jamuns, jalebis, rasgullas, and laddus, all washed down with Fiji lemonade, those being the days before cola drinks came to India. But of course, I always ate too much and I would be sick when we got home and I was handed over to my ayah for further admonishment. Too many laddus, too many laddus. How much Baba eats? And she nicknamed me Laddu, which gradually became Ladla or Sweetheart. Aya fancied a little eau cologne from time to time, and I would smuggle the bottle out to her. After sprinkling it over her sturdy forearms, the bottle would be surreptitiously returned to my mother's dressing table. Aya loved me for this little service, a friend for the sake of advantage, as Aristotle put it. Came the day when my mother could not help noticing the very low level of perfume in the bottle. Who has been using my eau de cologne? Demanded my mother. I used it on the dog, I said quickly, already a good dissembler. She was smelling horribly. Poor beauty. Our aging Alsatian did smell a bit, but not too badly. However, she was given a good bath in a Dettol solution and sulked for weeks, not being fond of bathing. My own baths took place in a large tin tub. I liked splashing around and flooding the bathroom, and my mother preferred to keep a distance, leaving poor Aya to take the soaking. Sometimes my father joined me in the bathtub and we would sing sea shanties together. Shanties were sailors' songs sung in unison while they were at work on the old sailing ships. My favorite was, "What shall we do with the drunken sailor?" And whenever this question was sung out by my father, I would sing back, "Put him in a tub and wet him all over." These tub baths with my father became something of a tradition and continued for several years until he was taken from me. He called them ructions. I do not find this word in the dictionary, so I presume he invented it, creating ructions. He enjoyed it as much as I did. Perhaps it took him back to his own childhood. He was usually a serious, quiet sort of person, but on those occasions he would be quite boyish and noisy, and because he was parent and playmate, he was daddy to me. That was what I always called him, not father or dad or papa. My mother was mum or mummy, but my father was always daddy. The Jamnagar seafront was only a 20-minute drive from our bungalow, and some evenings we visited the little port called Rosie Bandar, which had a retired British naval officer, Mr. Bourne, as port commander. My small hand in my father's, we strolled up and down the pier and I explored with him the harbor and beach, bringing back seashells and cowries of great variety. On one occasion, I brought home a small crab which lived in a spare bathtub for several days. I was very attached to the crab for 2 or 3 days, I think, and then I forgot all about it. Finally, Aya took pity on the poor creature and dropped it into a nearby well. A small British steamer was often in port at Rosy Bandar, and my father and I would visit the captain, a good natured Welshman who gave me chocolates, a great treat in those days, for Jamnagar was too small a place for Western confectionery shops. I was ready to go to sea with the captain, convinced that chocolates were only to be found on tramp steamers. One day, Daddy took me for a trip in an Arab dhow. It was a fairly large ship, but it swung about tremendously, and I was quite terrified at first. We sailed down the coast for a couple of hours before being put ashore at one of the smaller ports. I was glad to be back on terra firma. I have always liked having my feet set firmly on the ground. There was a small aerodrome at Jamnagar, and a couple of the younger royals who were in their late 20s liked going up in their two-seater tiger moths and performing stunts in the air. A smart young prince invited my mother to join him on one of these flights, and she took me along. Very reluctantly, I squeezed into the cockpit beside her, and away we went. He looped the loop and performed all sorts of aerial acrobatics in that flimsy four winged contraption, while I screamed loud enough to frighten the gods if they were listening. When finally we landed, I was heartily sick and quite determined never to get into a plane again. A week later, this same pilot, while showing off in a similar fashion, crashed his plane and was killed. On hitting the ground, the windshield had blown in and decapitated him.